Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe, but when the answer came, it was not with open arms. It was with fire and death. Out of nowhere, the skies darkened as the massive Calreth fleet descended upon Earth. Their ships, massive and menacing, blotted out the sun as they unleashed a torrent of destruction on cities across the globe. In mere minutes, the world was thrown into chaos, buildings crumbled, and the cries of the innocent filled the air. The attack was merciless and sudden. People ran through the streets, desperately seeking shelter as the ground shook beneath them. Whole families were lost in the blink of an eye, and the world that humanity had painstakingly built over centuries lay in ruins. From New York to Tokyo, Moscow to Cape Town, no place was spared from the Calreth onslaught. It was as if the invaders wanted to make a statement, that humanity was nothing but an insignificant speck in the grand scheme of the galaxy, easily crushed. When the attack finally ceased, the true extent of the devastation became apparent. What were once bustling cities were now piles of rubble. Emergency services were stretched beyond their limits as they tried to rescue the survivors buried beneath the debris. Hospitals overflowed with the injured, and makeshift triage centers sprang up in every major city. The global networks broadcasted the destruction non-stop, and the world watched in stunned silence. The death toll was staggering, and the survivors were left grappling with grief and rage. Then, the message came. A chilling transmission, broadcasted across every screen and device: surrender, humans, or be annihilated. You are weak. You are unworthy of existing in our galaxy. The Calreth Emperor's voice was cold and dismissive, as if speaking to insects rather than a civilization. But humanity's response was not what the Calreth expected. Instead of cowering, humans stood united in defiance. Anger boiled over as the realization set in: this was not just an attack on Earth, but on their very existence. Across the globe, leaders and civilians alike made it clear that they would not submit. The pain and suffering caused by the Calreth attack forged a resolve stronger than any weapon. You attacked our planet, they declared, and now we will destroy your galaxy. In an unprecedented move, the nations of the world set aside their differences. Leaders from every corner of the globe convened in an emergency summit. There was no talk of peace, no negotiations to be had. The only consensus was clear: retaliation. Humanity's best minds, military strategists, and scientists were brought together in a unified effort to devise a plan that would take the fight to the enemy. It was an audacious, almost impossible task, to strike back at an empire that spanned countless star systems. As humanity mobilized, there was a tangible sense of purpose in the air. The loss was immeasurable, the scars permanent, but their spirit was unbroken. They would not wait for the next attack. They would not hide and hope for mercy. They would stand, they would fight, and they would make the Calreth regret the day they ever thought to challenge the people of Earth. With a single goal in mind, humanity began an unprecedented campaign of preparation. Scientists and engineers, driven by the desire for vengeance and survival, worked around the clock. They salvaged what they could from the ruins of Earth, using every piece of alien wreckage left behind to reverse engineer their technology. The alien metal was stronger, their weapons more advanced, but human ingenuity in desperation proved to be an unstoppable force. Within weeks, new weapons and armor systems were developed, incorporating both human creativity and Calreth technology. In secret facilities buried deep underground, massive warships were constructed. Each one was a testament to humanity's resolve, bristling with armaments and shields unlike anything the world had ever seen. They were not just built for defense, they were made for war. The crowning achievement was the Indomitable Spirit, a ship that symbolized humanity's unyielding will. Its hull gleamed with a combination of alien alloys and Earth's own finest metals, and it was armed to the teeth with weapons that could rival the firepower of the largest Calreth ships. The militaries of the world, once fragmented, were now a single force. Soldiers who had once fought each other now stood side by side, united in purpose. Rigorous training regimens were established, focusing on both conventional and unconventional warfare. The best and brightest from every nation were chosen to lead, and their determination was palpable. Every soldier knew what was at stake: they were not just fighting for Earth, but for the very survival of humanity. But humanity wasn't alone in its fight. The Kalreth Empire had subjugated many species across the galaxy, and their cruelty was legendary. Word spread quickly of humanity's defiance, and soon, envoys from distant worlds began to arrive. These species had long suffered under the yoke of the Kalreth and saw in humanity a beacon of hope, a chance to strike back. They brought their own technologies, knowledge of Kalreth strategies, and most importantly, their unwavering support. Alliances were formed, and a coalition of unlikely allies took shape. Some were ancient civilizations, beaten down over centuries but still burning with a desire for freedom. Others were technologically advanced but too small to challenge the Kalreth on their own. Together, they offered their fleets, their weapons, and their warriors. They shared intelligence, revealing the weaknesses and inner workings of the Kalreth war machine. It was the beginning of a truly interstellar alliance, united by a common enemy. The combined effort resulted in a fleet like no other, a true armada that blended the best of humanity's and their allies' technology. It was a sight to behold, a symbol of defiance against oppression. The indomitable spirit led the charge, surrounded by ships of all shapes and sizes, each one brimming with the hope and determination of countless worlds. It was not just a fleet, it was a declaration. As the ships were prepared and the final adjustments made, a tense anticipation filled the air. The soldiers, pilots, and crew members knew the risks. They knew that many of them would not return. But there was no hesitation, no second guessing. They had seen the destruction of their homes, the deaths of their loved ones, and they carried that pain with them. It was a fire that burned bright, fueling their resolve. When the time came to launch, the world watched with bated breath. This was humanity's answer to the attack, their message to the galaxy. As the massive armada lifted off, the sky seemed to blaze with light. It was a sight unlike any other, a powerful reminder that when pushed to the brink, humanity would not break. They would rise, they would fight, and they would carry the battle to the heart of the enemy. They were ready. The Kalreth would soon learn that the people of Earth were far more formidable than they had ever imagined. Humanity's armada surged into Kalreth space like a tidal wave of vengeance. The Kalreth, still reeling from the audacity of Earth's retaliation, were caught off guard. The first strike was a flawless execution of precision and power. Human ships descended on a heavily fortified outpost, launching a relentless barrage of firepower. The outpost, a symbol of Kalreth dominance, crumbled under the assault before it could even send out a distress signal. The Kalreth had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now they were paying the price. News of the attack spread quickly through the Kalreth Empire. Panic took hold as their leadership scrambled to understand what had happened. This was supposed to be a weak, primitive species, yet here they were, striking at the heart of the Empire with ferocity and skill. The initial disbelief turned into a stark realization: the humans were not just retaliating, they were waging war. Humanity's forces pushed deeper into Kalreth territory, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. They moved with a terrifying efficiency, exploiting every weakness, every blind spot in the Kalreth defenses. Their tactics were unconventional, unpredictable. The Kalreth, used to crushing their foes with overwhelming force, were unprepared for the sheer ingenuity and adaptability of human strategy. Small, agile strike teams infiltrated key installations, sabotaging supply lines and communication hubs. The humans fought with a fierceness that the Kalreth had never encountered before, and the Empire was struggling to keep up. The turning point came at the Battle of Tornath. It was a critical stronghold, heavily defended and vital to the Kalreth war effort. The Kalreth commanders were confident, believing their superior numbers and firepower would easily overwhelm the human fleet. But they were wrong. Human ships darted through the enemy lines with precision, evading heavy fire and striking with devastating accuracy. The Kalreth, for all their might, found themselves outmaneuvered, their ships falling one by one. It was a stunning victory for humanity and a crushing blow to the Kalreth. The loss of Tornath sent shockwaves through the Empire. It was no longer a question of if the humans would reach their homeworld, but when. The Kalreth Empire, for the first time in centuries, was gripped by fear. They had never faced an enemy like this. Their arrogance had blinded them to the true threat humanity posed. Now, they were scrambling to fortify their remaining defenses, pouring resources into building up fleets and bolstering their strongholds. But it was too little, too late. The humans had seized the momentum, and they were not going to stop. As human forces continued their relentless advance, the Kalreth began to realize that this was not just a war of attrition. It was a war of annihilation. The humans were not here to negotiate or conquer, they were here to end the Kalreth threat once and for all. The Empire's leaders, so confident in their superiority, now faced the grim reality of their situation. Their fleets were in disarray, their forces stretched thin, and their once unshakable rule was crumbling before their eyes. Desperation set in. The Kalreth launched a counteroffensive, throwing everything they had at the human fleet. It was a chaotic, brutal battle, with ships clashing in a deadly dance of fire and steel. The Kalreth fought with a ferocity born of fear, but the humans were relentless. They pressed forward, cutting through the Kalreth lines like a blade. The Empire was on the brink of collapse, and its leaders knew it. As the human armada pushed ever closer to the Kalreth homeworld, there was a sense of inevitability in the air. The Kalreth had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the ultimate price. The humans had made their intentions clear from the start. They would not stop until the Kalreth Empire was nothing but a memory, a warning to any who dared threaten Earth again. The Kalreth homeworld, Raxilon, loomed ahead, a fortress planet that had stood invincible for millennia. Its surface was covered in sprawling cities, towering citadels, and colossal defense structures. The planet's skies were filled with battle stations and fleets, ready to repel any invasion. It was the heart of the Empire, the seat of its power, and the final stronghold. But now, for the first time, it was under threat. Humanity had arrived at their doorstep, and they were ready to deliver the final blow. The human armada emerged from the blackness of space, an unstoppable force that seemed to stretch on forever. They had fought long and hard to get here, and there was no turning back. The fleet spread out, forming an impenetrable wall of ships bristling with weapons. At the center was the indomitable spirit, a beacon of hope and defiance. The Kalreth forces, though numerous and powerful, could not ignore the sense of dread that crept through their ranks. The humans had proven time and again that they were not to be underestimated. Humanity's leaders, gathered on the bridge of the indomitable spirit, delivered a message to the Kalreth Emperor. It was simple, direct, and left no room for misinterpretation. This is your final chance. Surrender, or face annihilation. The Emperor, a figure of arrogance and pride, responded with nothing but scorn. He dismissed the humans as savages, unworthy of the Empire's attention. His hubris, the very trait that had led to this moment, was his downfall. He ordered his fleets to attack, confident that the might of the Kalreth would crush these insolent creatures once and for all. The battle that followed was nothing short of cataclysmic. The skies above Raxilon erupted in a storm of fire and metal as the two forces clashed. The Kalreth threw everything they had at the human armada, their massive ships unleashing torrents of energy that lit up the void. But humanity stood firm. Their ships, smaller and more agile, weaved through the chaos, striking with pinpoint accuracy. The indomitable spirit led the charge, its weapons tearing through the enemy lines with relentless fury. It was a brutal, bloody fight. The Kalreth defenders, fueled by desperation, fought with a savage intensity. But the humans were relentless. They pressed forward, their ships cutting through the Kalreth fleets like a knife through flesh. For every human ship that was lost, two more seemed to take its place. The Kalreth were being overwhelmed, their once mighty armada crumbling under the human onslaught. The defense stations, the last line of protection for the planet, fell one by one, their debris raining down on the cities below. As the battle raged on, the truth became undeniable. The Kalreth were losing. Their fleets were in shambles, their defenses shattered. The humans had done the impossible, they had breached the impenetrable fortress that was Raxilon. Panic spread like wildfire through the Empire. The civilians, once so confident in their leaders, now watched in horror as the enemy closed in. The emperor, his confidence shattered, frantically issued orders to what remained of his fleet. But it was too late. The human armada was unstoppable. The final phase of the battle began as the indomitable spirit descended into the atmosphere, leading the charge towards the capital. The Kalreth forces, now reduced to a fraction of their former strength, made a desperate last stand. But it was futile. The human ships rained fire down on the city, obliterating anything that stood in their way. The emperor's palace, a symbol of the empire's power and dominance, was leveled in a single, devastating strike. The emperor, the once mighty ruler of the galaxy, was no more. With the fall of the capital, the last vestiges of Kalreth resistance crumbled. Their army surrendered, their ships lay in ruins, and their leaders were either dead or captured. The human forces, battered but victorious, stood on the surface of Raxilon. They had done what no one thought possible, they had defeated the Kalreth Empire. The planet, once a shining beacon of the Empire's power, was now a smoldering ruin. The humans had made good on their promise. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the impossible became reality. The message was clear. Humanity, once seen as a weak and insignificant species, had risen from the ashes of their own destruction to bring down the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. They had faced the might of the Kalreth and emerged victorious. The price had been high, the cost in lives unimaginable, but they had done it. The Kalreth Empire was no more. Humanity had avenged their fallen, and the galaxy would never be the same. The aftermath of the war left the galaxy in a state of stunned silence. The once dominant Kalreth Empire, a force that had ruled with an iron fist for centuries, was shattered beyond recognition. Their fleets were decimated, their worlds liberated, and their name became synonymous with downfall. Humanity, a species that the galaxy had barely acknowledged, had rewritten the course of history. But this victory was not just a military triumph, it was a message to all who witnessed the fall of the mighty Kalreth. On Earth, celebrations erupted as the news of the victory spread. People gathered in the streets, embracing one another, shedding tears of relief and joy. The scars of the invasion still marred their cities, and the memories of the lost would never fade, but for the first time in a long while, there was hope. The people of Earth had stood together against an unimaginable threat and emerged victorious. This was their moment, a testament to their resilience, their strength, and their unbreakable spirit. The pain of the past was still fresh, but it was tempered by the knowledge that they had not just survived, they had triumphed. Leaders from across the world addressed their people, acknowledging the incredible sacrifices made. Families mourned their fallen, but there was a sense of pride and purpose that united everyone. The world that had been on the brink of destruction now looked to the stars with renewed determination. Earth was no longer just a single planet isolated in the vast galaxy. It was the birthplace of a species that had defied the odds and forged its own destiny. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as defenders, as survivors. The other species who had joined humanity's cause were quick to send their congratulations and gratitude. For many, the fall of the Kalreth was a long-awaited liberation. Worlds that had been under the oppressive rule of the Empire for generations were now free to determine their own futures. There was a sense of cautious optimism as these newly freed civilizations began to rebuild, inspired by the humans who had shown that even the greatest of tyrants could be brought low. The galaxy, once dominated by fear, now had a glimmer of hope. But with victory came the realization that the work was far from over. The Kalreth Empire, though broken, still had remnants scattered across the galaxy. Rogue fleets and isolated strongholds continued to resist, refusing to accept the reality of their defeat. Humanity, along with its allies, now faced the monumental task of rooting out the last vestiges of Kalreth power. It was a slow and arduous process, but one that was pursued with relentless resolve. The galaxy had changed, and there would be no place for those who sought to perpetuate the old ways of oppression and cruelty. A new era was dawning, and humanity found itself at the center of it. They had proven their strength, but now they needed to prove their wisdom. They extended a hand of friendship to the former subjects of the Kalreth, offering assistance in rebuilding their shattered worlds. It was a gesture that surprised many, especially those who had expected the humans to become the new tyrants of the galaxy. Instead, they saw a species that had been through the fires of war and emerged with a deep understanding of its costs. Humanity did not seek to rule, but to ensure that no one else would suffer as they had. The Galactic Assembly, a coalition of liberated worlds and former allies, was formed to maintain peace and stability. Earth was offered a leading role, but the human representatives declined, choosing instead to share the responsibility. They had no desire to become the new overlords of the galaxy. They had fought for freedom, and they intended to uphold that principle. Humanity's role in the galaxy was clear. They were the guardians, the ones who had shown that no empire, no matter how powerful, was beyond accountability. Years passed, and the galaxy slowly began to heal. The memory of the war remained, but so did the lessons learned from it. The Calreth worlds, once symbols of fear, were transformed into places of hope and renewal. Humanity, forever changed by the conflict, continued to push the boundaries of exploration and knowledge. They reached out to the stars, not with weapons, but with open hands, eager to learn, to grow, and to forge a future where all could thrive. And so, the legend of humanity spread. They were the ones who had defied the impossible, who had faced down an empire and emerged victorious. They were the ones who had stood against the darkness and refused to be broken. The galaxy would never forget what had happened, the day when the Calreth learned the hard way that humanity was not to be underestimated. They had come for Earth, believing it to be weak, but they had found a force that would not be conquered, a spirit that would not be extinguished. The humans, once considered insignificant, had risen to become the defenders of the galaxy. Their story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always a chance for light to prevail. And though the galaxy would change and evolve, one truth remained: those who dared to threaten Earth would do well to remember the fate of the Calreth. For humanity had proven, beyond any doubt, that they were more than capable of defending themselves, and that they would never, ever, back down.